Okay, if we're happy enough to get started, I think we're just past 2 o'clock. I think we probably have quite a few people online as well. So just to start the meeting, I'm going to ask Chief Executive to take us through the roll call.
Thank you, Mayor, and good afternoon, members. To all members of Derry City and Strabane District Council, you're hereby summoned to attend this reconvened meeting of the Council, which will be a hybrid meeting conducted remotely via WebEx and physically in the Council Chamber, Thursday, 23rd of February at 2 o'clock. Alderman Bresland. Alderman Devaney.
Here, John.
Alderman Guy.
Apology from Alderman Guy.
Alderman Hussey.
Online.
Alderman Carrigan.
Here, John.
Alderman McCready.
Apology from Alderman McCready.
Alderman McMorris.
Here, John.
Alderman Thompson.
An apology, John.
Alderman Work. Councillor Jason Barr. Councillor Raymond Barr.
Here online, John.
Councillor John Boyle.
Here online.
Councillor Michaela Boyle.
And Shaw online, John.
Councillor Carr. Councillor Cusick.
Here, John.
Councillor Dobbins. Councillor Donnelly. Councillor Doyle. Councillor Alex Duffy. Councillor Sandra Duffy.
Shaw.
Councillor Edwards.
Here online, John.
Sorry, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Duffy. Councillor Farrell.
Here.
Councillor Edwards. Councillor Ferguson.
Send our apologies. We'll join later.
Councillor Gallagher.
And Shaw.
Councillor Harkin. Councillor Heaney.
Shaw.
Councillor Jackson.
Shaw.
Councillor Kelly.
And Shaw.
Councillor Logue.
Apologies.
Councillor McGinley.
And Shaw online, John.
Councillor McGowan. Councillor McGuire. Councillor McHugh. Councillor McKinney.
Here, John.
Councillor Mooney. Councillor Norris. Councillor O'Neill. Councillor Riley. Councillor Senoy Barr.
Here, John. Online.
Councillor Tierney. Thank you, members.
Okay, thank you for that. I'll just read the broadcasting statement. I would like to remind everyone present at this meeting in the chamber or in attendance remotely that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. The broadcast may be terminated or suspended in accordance with our protocol. Due to your attendance at this meeting, you are consenting to being filmed and to the use and storage of these images for broadcasting or training purposes and for the purpose of keeping historical records and making those records available to the public. Members and approved speakers are reminded to only have their mics and cameras on while speaking at the meeting and to use the chat facility to highlight our request to speak. A copy of the Council's privacy notice can be found on the Council website. Thank you. This is the reconvened meeting of full council. Usually there is no chairperson's business at these meetings, but I have been contacted by a number of members in relation to last night's incident in Omagh. So on that vein, I am going to allow it. So I'm going to bring in Alderman Devaney first, as he was the first to contact me.
Thank you, Mayor, and I appreciate allowing this to come under chairperson's business. And I just want to say, first of all, Madam Mayor, that the DP sends out his thoughts and prayers to the PSNI officer, DCI, John Caldwell, last night. You know, this, and I welcome the cross party condemnation of this attack in Omagh late last night. And I have to say, Madam Mayor, this was a cowardly and a callous attack to murder a PSNI officer. And, you know, this was a man out helping out within the local sports complex, working with young people, I think helping with training and around that. And what exacerbates the situation, Madam Mayor, or the attempted murder, is that the officer's own son was in attendance, along with his friends and many others who witnessed it. And look, and I have to say, we must think of the traumatic event that unfolded last night in front of many. And you know what I'm hearing last night about last night is that Mr. Caldwell or John, when he knew what was happening, he ran from the people that were around him to ensure that they were safe. But he was fired upon and was brought down. And those who carried out, the shooting, moved over beside him and continued to fire shots into his body. But thankfully, what I'm hearing as well, Madam Mayor, and we have to praise the paramedic that was there, that helped until more help came on site. At the end of the day, this was a man out helping very much the community. And look, I know it has sent shockwaves across the PSNI and the public out there. And I know I have called it very much, Madam Mayor, a cowardly and callous attempt to murder an officer. I've been talking to people on today, and I can say what they're being called is the scum of the earth. On such an attack. But Madam Mayor, as I said, this will send shocks across the PSNI officers, but I am very, very confident that those colleagues of John who are members of the PSNI, will be out today carrying out their duty very, very professionally across Northern Ireland, helping those people who need their help most. But Madam Mayor, I believe we should, as a council, should condemn this attack today and wish John well in the future. And once again, Mayor, thank you very much for allowing me in under Chairperson's business.
Thank you, Alderman Fanny. Councillor McKinney.
Thank you, Mayor, for allowing me. And first, I'd like to say our thoughts are with Mr. Caldwell and his family. Last night's attack was an attack on a father, helping his community, a football coach, surrounded by young children and other members of families. Those children will have that imprinted on their little minds for the rest of their lives and could cause psychological problems as well with those children going forward. These terrorists are not needed in our community. These people are not wanted in our community. And I would appeal to those that have some influence on these people to ask them to consider their actions and to cease it immediately. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor McKinney. Alderman Hussey.
Thank you for the opportunity, Mayor. Ironically, I'm actually in Omagh today at the NILGA conference. And I can say that throughout that conference of elected representatives from throughout Northern Ireland, the sense of disgust is palpable. I thank you for the opportunity for us to comment on this. I wish the medical staff who are dealing with John's condition every good fortune going forward as they attempt to ensure a full recovery for DCI Caldwell. I've known John for some considerable time through his work, and he is a person who in his work has worked for the benefit and good of our community. And beyond his work, we seen last night what he was doing is working with the local Bearswift Football Club, helping those youngsters, including his own son, out. There's no other, it's a despicable act that has been carried out again in the town of Omagh or on the outskirts of Omagh. All has been said by others. I fully endorse. I wish John's colleagues every fortune moving forward in their investigation of this particular incident and hope it comes to a successful fruition. I believe there have been developments and I trust that those developments can be pursued to the full. Wishing John well going forward, praying and our thoughts are with his wife, family and colleagues. And indeed, we have to think also of those young people who found themselves involved in this horrendous incident that has occurred. I further understand and welcome the fact that Western Trust CAM will be initiating contact with all of those involved, because there will be trauma that will follow on from this can only be condemned. And those, I hate to use the word, those who were responsible, but they're totally irresponsible people, but those who perpetrated this act should hang their heads in shame, and anyone who is associated with them should similarly do so. And I sincerely hope and trust that the perpetrators will be brought to final justice. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson.
I'm a good mayor, and I suppose on behalf of Sinn Féin, I would like to extend our thoughts and our best wishes to John and his family as they come to terms with the second attack on John last night. And I agree with everything that's been said by previous speakers. One of the things that I took great encouragement from this morning was seeing a statement endorsed by all political leaders, united in their condemnation of last night's cowardly attack, last night's cowardly attempted murder on DCI John Caldwell. And it demonstrates the strength of feeling when you've got that united approach, calling on these type of incidents, this type of activity to stop. It's an attack on us all. It's an attack on our communities, and it was great to see that political leadership right across the north, united by all parties. In terms of one message that we would like to send from this council chamber today would be obviously our best wishes to John and his family, but for those that are intent on carrying out these attacks, we would be calling on them to join with us. They work towards building a better future for our children. The cowardly attacks that we seen last night offer nothing, and they offer no. They offer our children and our absolutely nothing going forward. So there's clear pathways that we see within these chambers where people can work together to improve the lives of people living within our communities. And we would encourage everybody to be part of that process. But in relation to our party, we fully endorse the sentiments that have been expressed by all our members. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Tierney.
Thank you, Mayor, for allowing me the opportunity on behalf of the SDLP to send our solidarity and support to John Caldwell, who was brutally attacked last night in Omagh. I think everyone knows how set far back the people who carried out this attack are, and how much the town of Omagh have been through, and the residents of that particular town have been through over many years. And for many of them, seeing and hearing what happened last night would have brought back many bad memories and for people in that town. I think this morning, seeing the statement that was sent out by all of the main political leaders across the north will hopefully go some way to show that the overwhelming majority of people across the north do not support those people who were involved in that attack last night. The very fact that it was carried out where young children were very close to is frightening, and God knows what the outcome of that could have been. I understand that nearby cars were also riddled with bullets, so that tells me that the people that carried out this attack had no thought for anyone else who was within that vicinity. They were there to do one thing, and regardless of who or what got in their way, they were going to try to do that. I think on a daily basis, people across the north show that they're not in support in any way of these types of attacks, and people have time and time again, come out, stood up and said that these attacks are not in our name. And I think that once again, the town of Omagh and the majority of people across the north today will be saying the exact same thing. I think the people who have carried this out need to wake up and realise that if they have got some political ideology, they need to understand that carrying out gun attacks late at night in front of young children is not going to advance that ideology one way or the other. And they need to get on board with the rest of us who can see can see this island moving towards something new in a positive way. I think they need to get on board with that, leave the guns and the attacks in the past where they belong. On behalf of the SDLP, we send our full support to John and his colleagues and to his wider family and all of the people who unfortunately had to witness that attack last night, and particularly, Mayor, the young children that John was coaching last night. It's very, very unfortunate. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Alderman Mark.
Thank you, Mayor. Thoughts and prayers for we John Caldwell, who sadly is over in Altagamon Hospital, not even in the miles where we sit, with his family, his colleagues in the PSNI, and with his children, especially his son, who witnessed last night's cowardly murder attempt in Omagh. A father who was getting ready to go home with his son back to his family, a man who serves and works in the community to make our streets safer and for all of us, and a role model who gives us time, or gives his time for coaching underage football team to make their lives better and through the next generation. John's commitment and serving the community goes way beyond a DCI, and let's hope and pray that John makes a fast and full recovery soon. And let's also give thanks to the entirety of the PSNA for the difficult work they do. Mayor, I think as I was mayor, as Councillor Attorney was mayor, we lit up the buildings on the 11th of March to recognise European Victims' Day, and I would ask if the buildings could be lit this year round again, red on the 11th of March in the district area. And it's furthermore, as we approach the 25th anniversary of the Belfast Good Friday Agreement, it recognised the people who sacrificed most over the years of violence, and whose dignity and generosity and spirit has meant that the wider society has enjoyed a level of peace. However imperfect it may be, this is stand with the troubles, the victims, survivors across the community, Mayor, and no one wants this. Thank you, Mayor.
No problem. Alderman Mark, Councillor Harkin.
Thank you, Mayor, for letting us come in on this. People before profit believe that this was a senseless, callous, reactionary and reckless act. And we send our solidarity to everybody who's been impacted by it and everybody who's been traumatised by it. We see this as serving absolutely no purpose but to spread fear and disunity amongst our communities at a time when communities are coming together to deal with a whole host of problems. The main parties have all signed on to a common statement. We think that it's hypocritical for some of those politicians to be condemning this when they've spent the last 2 years trying to ratchet up community tensions, trying to sow disunity, and when they've courted the support of paramilitary organisations and criminals who are intent on and claiming that they will start a campaign of violence and have threatened ministers from the south. So it's hypocritical for those people now to be condemning this when they've been doing the exact opposite for 2 years. What we've seen happening in Omagh is a setback, but the vast majority of people don't support this. They will refuse to be dragged back to the dark days of the Troubles. There is a path forward to make change in this across our society, and that's what we will be endeavouring to do in the coming weeks and months ahead. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Kerr.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Could I add my voice of support and good wishes to the officer from last night, and saying solidarity to his wife and family, and particularly his son, who had to endure watching his father being shot. These things, they're from bygone days. They're not wanted now. So condemn what happened last night unreservedly. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Donnelly.
Chair. Chair, it's been stated on here that this act will bring back many bad memories, and there's no doubt about that. Chair, today is the anniversary of brutal deaths of 3 young citizens of this constituency, this council. They were gunned down by British forces, and this was led and facilitated by the British police. Now, regarding these deaths, Mayor, there's people in this chamber whose parties openly celebrated and gloated on the deaths of these young men. And they have not, or they will not, condemn the actions of the British state, or will they call for the perpetrators to face justice. Mayor, only yards from here, there was a young police officer killed in 1993, and the section of the people in this council have refused to condemn that, and they've seen it as a necessary act. And their opinion would be that the people who carried it out needed to be protected and sheltered. There's people in here who haven't changed their positions regarding both of them incidents, and they weren't isolated incidents, there was numerous. And that, they will argue that what happened was, it was strategically objective. And that's not to argue that last night's actions were strategically objective. That's whoever carried this out to explain their position. During my term in this council, Mayor, this chamber has had elected reps who have been responsible for deliberately ending people's lives, both here in this country and our countries. Some of them have even been decorated for their efficiency in this regard. Others have described them as heroes and revolutionaries, and no one has changed their position regarding the actions that some of these people have carried out. We've had parties in here whose MP have stood openly in the British House of Commons and praised the actions of the British Army, and shared no amount of condemnation has forced them to alter their positions. And I don't think any amount of condemnation will force people that carried out last night's action to change either. It will have no impact. I do have sympathy for the family of the individual targeted, but unlike the colleagues of the individual targeted, who persistently target the families of Republican activists in this city and beyond, and what we've seen unfolding last night on Twitter and our social media, and will continue to carry on, is that this unfortunate incident will be used by all sides in a punch and judy type of political point scoring and opponent bashing. Yesterday's issues debated in this chamber, and last night's incident is a direct result of the failure of the political system operating in this part of Ireland. No child should have to see his father being shot. No children should have to witness what happened last night. But unfortunately, there are graveyards up and down this country that's full of children, and some of these children were killed by the British state. It was happening before I was born, and it will continue to happen long after everybody in this chamber has passed away, simply because of the failure of the political system in this country. And no amount of fudgery or kick the can down the road deals will stop it. What we need is a proper system put in this country so that the children and everybody in it can get on with determining their own future. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Raymond Barr online, and could Councillor Jason Barr be marked present.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, what happened to Roma last night was totally wrong. The vast majority of people on this island do not support these actions and do not want to be dragged back to those days. My thoughts are with the victim of last night's shooting, his family, especially the young lad that witnessed the shooting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barr, and could Councillor Emmett Doyle's attendance be noted as well? Okay, thank you. That's all indicated speakers in relation to that. And just for a note of information from myself, just literally as I was coming in the door to this meeting, I've received an email that is from the Executive Office in relation to the 1-year anniversary of the war in Ukraine. And it has asked for a response from the Council if there's any intention to mark it. The Executive Office seems to be indicating that there will be a minute silence at 11 o'clock on Friday. That's entirely up to individuals to observe. I'll certainly consider the email following this meeting, and we'll communicate it through usual channels as to what we will do. Go ahead.
Chair, is this a specific thing for Ukraine, or is it about all conflicts throughout the world? Because there's Palestinians being slaughtered at the minute, and there's all sorts of genocidal actions being taken by imperialist countries. So it's specifically to do with NATO and Russian war.
This is a specific action in terms of the war in Ukraine. As Mayor, I have facilitated lighting up buildings for Palestine, and will continue to do that. We'll continue to mark those occasions. This is a request in relation to the war in Ukraine. Okay, moving on to the business of today, I'm going to pass to Councillor Jackson.
I'm good. Mayor, do you need to wait until the motion goes on the screen?
Okay, can I get a seconder for the motion? Thank you, Councillor McKinney.
Okay, thanks, Philip. Mayor, I tabled this motion on the back of the overwhelming ballot of fire service employees to take industrial action demanding fair pay, and it's on the back of industrial action taken right across our public service, and these people playing vital roles delivering services to our community. And we've seen this week where there's been widespread demonstrations, people demanding demanding action and demanding a fair wage increase. Mayor, I going to declare an interest as a member of NIPSA and as an employee of the Western Health and Social Care Trust. But only today I received communication from my trade union, and it was a personal statement from one of those healthcare workers who took the stand during the week. And if I can beg your indulgence, I intend to read that statement out. This is somebody who works within our public service, delivering for citizens of the city and district. He says that I lost a day's pay today because the Tories are threatening our health service and the health of me and my family by slashing health budgets and underpaying staff. The Tories want to privatise our health service and are well on their way to accomplishing this. Waiting lists are now at an all-time high, and with many ordinary folks having to wait up to 3 or 4 years for a specialist appointment. On average, it's now a 4 to 8 hour wait to be seen in A&E. This is forcing ordinary folk to consider visiting a private hospital for consultation and paying for their treatment, often putting families into more debt. The majority of the Tory cabinet are multi-millionaires. They can afford to pay for private health. The majority of ordinary folk can't. I lost a day's pay today because the Tories are forcing families into deeper poverty by privatising all of our public services. We now have to pay more for our energy, for our transport costs, and they even simply post a letter or parcel. In England and Wales, you also have to pay for your water. As the cost of all these services increase, so does the price of food and clothing, etc., etc. The majority of the Tory cabinet are multimillionaires. They can afford to pay the increasing costs. But not only that, the majority of the Tory cabinet own shares in these companies that are receiving regular dividends from extortionate profits gained by these companies. The majority of ordinary folk can't afford the increase in costs, nor do they have the savings to invest in shares of these companies. These companies also choose to underpay the majority of their employees, even though they're making these extortionate profits. Simply put, this is how the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. I lost a day's pay today because the Tories are threatening the education of my children by slashing public school budgets and underpaying its teachers and staff. The majority of the Tory cabinet are multimillionaires. They can afford private education. The majority of ordinary folk can't. I lost a day's pay today because the Tories are forcing my children into huge debt if they choose to further educate themselves through university. The majority of the Tory cabinet are multimillionaires. They can afford to pay university and maintenance fees for their families. The majority of ordinary folk can't. I lost a day's pay today because the Tories are forcing families to live in squalor by not investing in good quality social housing. The majority of the Tory cabinet are multimillionaires and can afford to buy property, invest in property, and often own numerous properties throughout these islands. The majority of ordinary folk can't. I lost a day's pay today because the majority of ordinary people gave over £11 billion to charities in 2020 alone. These charities include health, housing and food banks. If ordinary folk hadn't given their last pennies in support, then thousands of men, women and children would have desperately suffered through poor health, poor conditions or through malnutrition, or many may have died. The majority of the Tory cabinet are multimillionaires. They don't give their last pennies. I know this because they're still millionaires. Rishi Sunak and his wife are worth an estimated $730 million alone. I lost a day's pay today to stand with my union and its members, to stand up for my rights and fight against the regime of the Tory government. I will continue to fight against corruption and lies until the day I die. Mayor, that's a statement from one of our public service workers, and I think it speaks loudest. These are people that are delivering services for us and for our families, and we need to take a stand against this Tory government. We've rehearsed the cost of living challenges and the pressures that are put on households and businesses at length at this chamber. But I think it's vitally important that we continue to show our solidarity to all those that are taking a stand against the Tory austerity that's been imposed on us all. So I would encourage all to support the motion that's in front of us. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Councillor Mooney.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to Councillor Jackson. I think after reading that statement out, I think it says it all. There's not much more that can be said. In regards to the motion itself, obviously, the mandate itself received by the FPU was, decisive, to say the least. 80% voted yes on an overwhelming 73% turnout, with 94% of members here in the north who voted on it. I think we all probably know fire service personnel in our own personal capacity. I know I do, and the role they do. It's a professional role. The risk they take in carrying out their duties, we all know can be extremely dangerous and extremely perilous to their own health and their own well-being. But apart from that, Chair, it's clear that Councillor Jackson's motion is trying to wrap up all the current industrial action, which is right and proper, because on Tuesday we stood with teachers here out. You were there, Mayor, at the rally I attended in Guildhall Square just here. talking to teachers, you could see that not alone were they discussing about pay claims, which was probably the more minor aspect. A lot of teachers I spoke to were talking about classroom sizes and the reduction in classroom assistants and the teaching time and the quality time that they can support children. We know children are probably on maybe different levels, they say, but a lot of teachers were saying that I spoke to were saying that they can't get the same level of time with kids and things like that there. We also know as well that Councillor Jackson referenced healthcare workers. He works in the system as well. But we also know of the latest waiting time lists. You go onto the Western Trust Board, you see, the waiting time. So obviously there's a lot of problems associated, but we must support those workers here out because they're the people who are doing the work. They're the people who are keeping the system going. Our postal workers, our healthcare workers, our teachers, or even our own civil servants, our own council officers who work in this building throughout. So the SDLP, of course, support this motion, Chair, and pass on our solidarity, and hopefully that employers can constructively engage with the representatives and come to a fair and achievable position. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Mooney. Councillor Harkin.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, we also send our solidarity to firefighters and commend them for rejecting a 2% offer from the Tories and then a derisory 5% offer. And we believe that the firefighters have a right, as to all public sector workers, to above inflation pay increases. Nobody should be getting or accepting a pay raise right now that doesn't cover the cost of inflation, and that's at the centre of the problem. And we commend all them workers that have been on picket lines, and more workers will be forced to join picket lines in the coming weeks and months. And this is the heart of the resistance right now. It's the heart of the resistance to the Tories, and it's the heart of the resistance to try and save our health service. Tonight, I'll be going to a documentary by John Pilger about the dirty war on the NHS that has been led by the Tories. Very much engineered by them over many decades, and the Toryism is the problem. But it's not just the Tories. If we look at the Belfast Telegraph today, there's been by Stormont, by the trusts that are overseen by Stormont, a 250 rise in spending on private healthcare, and the workers describe it as a slap in the face. Now, that cannot happen without the main parties here agreeing to that. So I would ask Councillor Jackson, does he think that that is an awful mistake and a slap in the face to workers who are now out on strike? Because this is one of the reasons why the health service here is being wrecked, funneling money to private organisations. Number two, last year, when Stormont was still up and running, the five big parties all voted to impose the Tory pay cut on our health and social care workers. I think that that was a mistake and a disgrace. Does Councillor Jackson agree with me that that should never have happened and that workers should have been backed by the main parties in rejecting that offer and backed up in their strikes? And then finally, how are we going to deal with this? We have no Stormont. We have a Tory government that doesn't care, as Councillor Jackson said, about ordinary people. We believe that the way that we can break the Tories and win the pay revolt is through escalating the struggles right now that we're seeing developing here in the north and across the water towards a general strike that can win the pay revolt and lay the basis for bringing down the Tories and ousting them out of government. Does Sinn Féin support the increasing calls now for a general strike and coordinating that type of action by workers right across these islands? Thank you, Mayor.
You, Councillor Harkin. Councillor McKinney.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm not going to give a political speech because I don't think there's any need for one. Thank you, Christopher, for bringing it. I'm just going to talk really about the last fireman strike. And I recall when I lived on Arm Road in Belfast, walking down Annandale Avenue and watching soldiers, ill-equipped, and policemen trying to release a young driver whose legs were trapped in the pedals using crowbars, etc. I would ask the government to step up and pay what is owed to these firemen who put their lives in danger every single day, and also all the other private health workers as well. I don't want to see untrained soldiers trying to carry out a life-saving job with poor equipment, because they were driving then green goddesses, which are now petrol lorry, and it was absolutely disgusting. So it was what we're trying to work with. So what I will say is the government needs to step up, and shouting and yelling ball about the executive and the 5 big parties won't make a heap of difference, because we don't have an executive. We need the Tory government to step up and do this. And in fact, if Labour, when they were in power, they had kept paying people the correct money, we wouldn't be in a situation we are. So that's socialism for you.
Thank you, Councillor McKinney. Alderman Kerrigan.
Thank you very much, Mayor, for allowing me in. And as has been stated, we know the good work that is carried out by the fire brigades, and we know that everyone is struggling. We've went through the situation, even in our own rich process there, the difficulties that has to be done. And again, there should be money provided for these individuals for the good work that they do. And to be fair, Councillor McKinney's just hit the nail on his head there. I mean, the resources. You know, I mean, the strikes. It's a last case that they're forced into it. And again, there are things that the Secretary of State and that Westminster should be doing. There's the absence of Stormont. It is what it is at present. As I say, that's not going to move anytime soon, unless things change dramatically. But again, it's a push in Westminster, and it's got to be done that we can, that things can be done in Westminster. And I know off topic, Mayor, but you know, Dathly's law was able to be pushed through. So there are things that Secretary of State and there are things that Westminster can do. And these people that are working hard and in these jobs here, they need to be properly paid. Everyone's feeling the pinch. The self-employed man is, as well as the civil service. So they're all suffering. So as I say, Mayor, we're content to support the motion put forward by Councillor Jackson. Thank you very much, Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Donnelly.
Chair, look, just to say that happy to support the motion, and you know, I think when we look at the role of firefighters and you know the bravery, they literally put their lives at risk in order to protect the public. And you know, the question is it cuts the firefighters issues regarding inadequately equipped firefighters. And Chair, if we need to see some of the dangers and some of the problems that they face, we just need to look at the fire in Grenfell and the damage that has done the firefighters, with a number of them since having developed incurable cancer, and the digestive cancers and leukemia. And some reports have put that firefighters, they're 5 times more likely to have a heart attack and 3 times more likely to have a stroke than civilians. We look at you know, the Twin Towers, the number of firefighters who were killed there in the line of duty. So I think it's important that they are adequately paid and equipped and have proper working conditions. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Devaney.
Thank you, Mayor, for allowing me in. And just in the back of everyone else, as my colleague did say, we have no problem in supporting this notice of motion coming forward here by Councillor Jackson. We all know the work that the fire service carry out in life and death situations, and it's a very, very important role. And look, as our party has always stated, we always state that you know, workers like that deserve a fair pay and fair pay rise, and especially in the cost of living crisis. And I do agree with what Councillor Jackson has stated and around, you know, yes, I do believe that the more wealthy people should pay more than those well off to help to cover some of the cost of living, but that's for another argument the other day. But when you look at Councillor Jackson's party, his party is one of the wealthiest parties across Northern Ireland in the Republic, and they seem to have money. When you look at the 4 million that was left to them by Mr. Hampton, and so they would be one of the. I would class them as one of the wealthiest as well. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, Councillor O'Neill.
Thanks, Mayor, and I'll be brief because Councillor Harkin outlined our support for the motion, but just kind of in response to previous comments. The NHS is one of the greatest examples of socialism that we have here in our society, which is why the Tories are doing everything that they can do to do it down and sell it off. And, I do feel Alliance have the cheek to talk about, trade unionism whenever their party did not support the Trade Union Freedom Bill in Stormont, which would have given trade unions much more power, which would have made such a difference to the strike actions that are in process at the moment. And Stormont have played a role in facilitating the doing down of the NHS here. And one example is whenever they increased the money for domiciliary care workforce, because there's a crisis in terms of domiciliary care. Rather than increasing the workforce of domiciliary care workers employed by the Trust, they handed the money to the private domiciliary care providers who continue to make increased profit. And, on The View there the other week, the 5 executive parties were talking about the crisis in the health service, and not one of them talked about the need for above inflation pay increases for workers. Not one of them talked about the actual reality on the ground for people on the front line there. Not one of them talked about the escalating privatisation that exists within the health and social care service, and no one talked about public health. And as a health and social care worker, I totally agree with the words that Councillor Jackson read out in the introduction to his motion. And we need to do all we can to back the workers. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Neill. No further indicated speakers. Councillor McHugh's online, if he could be marked present. Back to yourself, Councillor Jackson, to sum up.
Very good, Mayor, and thanks to everybody who spoke in support of the motion. And I was contacted by somebody who works within the fire service and asked me, and I was asked to highlight the overwhelming support for the overwhelming result of the ballot in support of industrial action. But they were at pains to stress that this was something that they wanted to avoid at all costs. And they were also at pains to point out that they didn't want the fire service to be singled out because this is a Tory attack on all our public sector. And that was something that I was very careful in terms of they include all dollar sectors that are currently making demands for a fair pay increase. And I work in the health service, and I've attend picket lines whenever I can to show solidarity to all those workers who are demanding better pay and better conditions. And one of the things that is consistent amongst every sector is that they want politics to work. That the constant bickering amongst political parties here it's frustrating for them, and it's disheartening. And I'm not surprised that you've got some parties in here that try to sow division, and it was ironic that that was something that Councillor Harkin had criticised other parties for doing earlier. But this is an attack on us all from the Tory government, and to be fair, they're being assisted by the DUP in Westminster. But we need to take a collective stand. We need to stand together against the DUP and the Tory government to help protect our public sector. And that's the message that we're getting very clearly for all those workers. So I would encourage, and welcome the fact that people supported that, but this sniping isn't helpful, and it's something that our public sector workers have explicitly asked us to avoid. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Okay, I don't think that we need a vote. Everybody seemed to be in agreement. So that motion is unanimously passed. So thank you, Councillor Jackson. Next motion is Councillor Alex Duffy. If you have a seconder, Councillor Duffy. Sorry. Councillor Norris, thank you. Okay, over to yourself, Alex.
Good Mayor. I suppose we've all seen this week there was an update from DFI in regards to the opening of the A6, predicted opening. While we all welcome the news and this imminent development, there seems to be a lack of clarity around the actual final completion date of the project, as we all know. This has caused ongoing disruption to the neighbouring communities, and it's essential that this is addressed. As a council, we all recognise the significance of the project and the impact it has on our communities. Therefore, we call on the Department for Infrastructure to provide us with an update on the clarification regarding the final completion date of the A6 dual carriageway. We believe that this is an important step towards ensuring our community remains informed and updated on this much anticipated project. We all must work together to ensure that the completion of the A6 dual carriageway proceeds smoothly with as minimal disruption to our communities. Thank you, members, for your attention on the matter, and we look forward to receiving an update from the Department of Infrastructure as soon as possible with more clarity on the actual finishing of it. I think the motion is read there too, folks.
Thank you, Councillor Duffy. Councillor Norris?
Thank you, Mayor. I have a slight amendment. I've already given it to Teresa. So it's basically this council.
Fine, and it's seconded by Councillor Riley. Yeah. Good.
So, Mayor, it's basically the right Department Secretary to get an update. It's similar to what Councillor Duffy was saying, but it's the final phase. The phase coming from Drummahoe to Maydown, roundabout. Totally back what Councillor Duffy is saying here, and we totally agree. This has been going on for so long now. Years ago since we talked about the A6, and now finally, after all this time, we're getting a completion date of possibly 10 weeks away. But what I believe what's going to happen is, without the final phase, Drummahoe and Altnagalvin is going to come the new Dungiven. It's going to be a bottleneck for all the lorries and cars coming into town. And then what will happen is, what's happening now is the shortcut will be used through Eglinton and other sort of country roads leading down to wherever they're going. And you'll get lorries and cars going on these roads that shouldn't be on the roads. The last sort of information we got, dear MLA, was that from the DFI, that this final phase is going to cost 200 million for a 7-kilometre bit of road. But they haven't got the fund. They haven't went for the funding yet, or the fund hasn't been given. Also, they were blaming sort of Maboy as a reason for why it's not happening. Now, at the last workshop, I asked the DIFRA team that's working on Maboy, are they holding up the road? And they have said they are definitely not holding up the road. They are working in line, and they will be in line with DFI when they're ready. So I would welcome a response from the Permanent Secretary as well. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Norris. Councillor McKenna, are you happy to speak on both? Yeah, go ahead.
We fully support the motion and the amendment. And just to highlight really there that Eglinton Tamnahearn Road, which is used by a lot of heavy traffic. And when I first sort of got elected myself and Councillor Ferguson, and I'm a lorry driver by trade, contacted the local haulage companies to try and force them to go down and go into the city a different route, which would have been through Drummerhoe. And to be quite honest, we got dogs abuse. So it's really important that we do try and find the funding, and we do continue from Drummerhoe down into Maydown. And I would also say we need to sort out the A2 from Maydown through to Caw. The amount of accidents there every single month is unbelievable. So we fully support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McKinney. Alderman Devaney, are you happy to speak on the amendment as well as the motion?
Yes, Mayor.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor, for allowing me in. And our party has no problem in supporting the notice of motion and the amendment. I think everyone has been aware of the holdbacks and the delays and around the delivery of the new A6. And I think people are getting fed up at the moment with the 40-mile-an-hour speed limit. That's what this road was built for, to move traffic out. As far as the amendment is concerned, Madam Mayor, I totally agree with it, that part of the road. If it isn't sorted out from Drummerhoe to Maydown, that will cause another bottleneck at Drummerhoe. And I believe that piece of work needs to go on to extend the A6 on down into Maydown, and that would relieve a lot of pressures for the bottleneck that will come in Drummerhoe, and relieve the pressure on the village of Eglinton, because that is seen as the shortcut between the A6 and the road to down into the Causeway Coast and Glens area. It has been an issue for years down there with lorries, HGV vehicles travelling through Eglinton. But Mayor, just to say once again, we support the amendment coming, the notice of motion and the amendment. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Alderman Devaney. Councillor Neil, on both?
Yeah, on both. And if I could, after this amendment is agreed, if I could just add a little sentence at the end of it. So yeah, people before profit are happy to support this motion. This road has been a long time coming. It's been mentioned about the Moboy dump holding up the final phase of the A6, and some of the difficulties around this are the fact that in the original environmental impact assessment for that phase of the A6, they managed to miss the almost 2 million tonnes of illegally dumped waste within their environmental impact assessment. Now, in the conversations through the Moboy stakeholder groups and with the department, there still has been no guarantees whatsoever that a new environmental impact assessment will be done for this phase of the road. They've given no commitment whatsoever, which is shocking. Now, the DAERA have said they're working closely with the FI with regards to this, but the FI have not showed up to one Moboy stakeholder meeting, even though that they're a stakeholder and even though they have a vested interest when it comes to this road. So, we need to be called on the DFI to actually attend these stakeholder meetings, and they need to give guarantees that a new environmental impact assessment will be done and a habitats assessment will be done if they're going to actually carry out work on the final phase of the A6. So my amendment will be just a little sentence outlining that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. No further speakers on the amendment, so I'm going to take the amendment as agreed and passed. Now becomes the substantive motion. And Councillor Neil, I will return to you if you want to add a further amendment.
I'll just read it, Teresa, but it'll just be just a final sentence to say to have guarantees that a new EIA will be conducted for this final phase. But I'll just read it in.
Okay, can we get a seconder? Mr. Harkins, thank you. Any comments on it, or are we just happy enough to support that amendment? Go ahead, Councillor
Thanks,
Ridley.
Mayor, for bringing me in, and thanks to Councillor Duffy for bringing the proposal before us, and then also Councillor Norris with the amendment that we dealt with already. In relation to this amendment, I know Councillor Norris detailed the correspondence back to Sinead McLaughlin MLA already in this, and I appreciate what the proposer of this amendment is saying about how DFI haven't been involved in the way that they should have been in relation to my boy, and I think that that's unfortunate and should be challenged, and certainly we want to see all the statutory agencies playing a full role in dealing with the Maboy site. DFI wrote back to Sinead McLaughlin earlier this month detailing that the department is working closely with the Northern Ireland Environmental Agency and other stakeholders to ensure that the final scheme design fully takes account of the impact of the waste site, and they go on to say that the integrated approach is progressing well, and that any remediation proposals will have to take account of all the respective parties' requirements, including those relating to the A6 dualling. So we don't have an issue with the amendment on the screen in front of us. I do think that DFI have already indicated when I was at the attendance of the sod cutting of the existing A6 work that Councillor Duffy's original proposal related to. And at that stage, they talked about the work being finishing at Drumahoe, and at that meeting, they were also challenged by elected representatives from both this council area and other council areas in Causeway Coast and Glens, who were at that meeting saying to them that they needed to prioritise the scheme fully all the way through to Maydown, not just leaving it at Drumahoe. And I think that that's the key part here, is that DFI are aware of that for some time. And I think that the amendment that's there, we're happy to support it, but we do need to see DFI deliver the entire A6 scheme, as Councillor Norris has said. If the way it is at the moment, you're just transferring the bottleneck from what was done given to Drumahoe, and that's not going to be of any significant use for people who live in Drumahoe, and it's certainly not going to be the scheme as it was fully intended when the money was committed to the A6 project back a number of years ago. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Any further speakers on the amendment? Nope, nobody in the chat box, and no indication of opposition to it, so I'm going to assume that that amendment is passed as well. So back to the original motion, and no further speakers indicated. So Councillor Duffy, if you would like to sum up.
Good Mayor, and same to the members who spoke on it and for the amendments. I'm happy enough with the amendments as well. I know personally, in speaking to residents who are affected by this delay of the A6, that it has causing a lot of disruption to their lives. Even personally, I went to go to a charity function in the Belfry one day, and I must turn on and ended up in Clotty. I couldn't turn to come back again. There was nowhere on the road. It's just the whole disruption of it, and I'm sure that's a daily occurrence for many people. But no, as Councillor O'Neill with the environmental assessment and all as well, and I fully support that too. And I think that's very, very important, just given the whole issue with my boy that I'm heavily invested in as well. No, thank you, members, and Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Duffy. I'm going to assume that that is unanimous, no voices of opposition. Okay, thank you, well done. Next motion is Councillor McGinley.
Good Mayor, and I'll take the motion as read. If I could get a seconder.
Yeah, Councillor Jackson seconded. Go ahead.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Firstly, just if I could declare an interest, because I'm a new committee member for Shandol and CAC, and obviously they're mentioned within the motion. And bringing this motion forward, I want to begin by welcoming the development of 119 homes in Craigan as part of the wider Shandol and CAC regeneration project, and that'll be known as Craiga Heights going forward. The development is fantastic for Cregan and providing housing and first-class sporting facilities to the community. I'd like to congratulate the teams at Radius, Shan Dolans and the council who have all worked collaboratively to see this development progress. I also want to send best wishes to the families who in the first phase of the homes received their keys today for Creva Heights, so it's just fantastic. I'm sure many colleagues across this chamber have been helping constituents with their housing applications, and I know I have quite a few from the list who are patiently hoping that they'll receive an offer for one of the new homes at Creva Heights or indeed anywhere that they can call home. Before the DUP collapsed the executive, the then Sinn Féin Communities Minister, Deirdre Hargey, launched a plan that'll see the construction of over 100,000 homes over the next 15 years, giving more people access to social and affordable homes. Given the level of housing need in this city, it's a crucial initiative. However, like a lot of executive projects, there's now a huge deal of uncertainty over this plan as a result of the DUP's ongoing refusal to return to power sharing. This motion is therefore calling on the department to reaffirm its commitment to the plan. These homes are badly needed, so we can't allow one party's reckless and self-serving boycott of the political institutions to jeopardise vital investment in areas like housing and healthcare. I'm also calling on other parties and independent members across this chamber to support this motion and send a clear message to the DUP that they need to get back to work so that those of us who want to can get on with delivering much needed investment in areas such as housing, health and education. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor McGinley. Councillor Farrell.
Thanks, Mayor, and thanks to Councillor McGinley for proposing the motion. I'm going to speak in support of it. We obviously welcome the construction of the new development at Creva Heights. It's going to deliver 119 new homes that are badly needed in Cregan, and it's as a result of a really fruitful partnership between Radius Housing and Shan Dolan's GAC. But the sad reality is there's a housing crisis of massive proportions across Derry City and Strabane District Council. Figures released today state that there are over 5,500 people on the waiting list, and over 4,000 of them are experiencing housing stress. And that's the highest per capita figures across the entire North. That's 5,500 individuals and families who desperately need to be housed. The solution is simple. The solution is just build more homes, build a lot more homes. But regardless of the number of homes that have been built across this city and district in the last 5 years, the waiting list continues to grow and grow and grow. And the key point of this motion is about the housing supply strategy, about the vision to build 100,000 new homes over the next 15 years. But we have to remember that a third of those are going to be social housing. So it's not 100,000 social homes, it's 33,000 social homes, which equates to just over 2,200 every year. And we have to remember that the current housing strategy has a target of 1,900 per year. So realistically, it's about 300 extra social homes per year. And if we look at every council across the North, we're probably going to get an extra 30 homes per year. So if we look at the current housing list for Derry and Strabane, there's 5,500 people waiting to be housed. The current strategy hasn't put a dent in that over the last number of years. So an extra 30 new builds per year isn't going to make a blind bit of difference. I've got my calculator out and I've worked out if this plan is enacted, it's going to take 185 years to eliminate that housing waiting list. So to be honest, the plan lacks ambition. It's not going to make a tangible difference to anybody in this city and district. But whilst we support the motion, we need clarity on this plan due to the reckless behaviour of the DUP. But we have to warn, this is not the panacea that Sinn Féin believes it is.
Councillor Donnelly.
Chair. Councillor Farrell sort of hit the nail in the head there. There's a huge crisis And personally, if we're depending on Stormont, they sort that out, we hear, we'll get it open again. We'll see if it ever does get opened. But regards to the Creva Heights and the Shandones project, council had a role in that too, and there was meetings, and myself and Councillor Carr, amongst others, and our councillors were part of that, working with Dolan's and the Housing Association. And I've been dealing with a number of people who have got the keys to their home and they see the joy in these people's. This is just for having a home, a roof over their head for their children. It's absolutely unbelievable. But Mayor, for everyone in this project and 119 homes that gets a home, there's 50 others that won't get a home. And, we're dealing with, in 1 week alone, last week, I had been approached by 33 cases, new people, and trying to get in in 1 week alone. That doesn't count in the cases that you'd been dealing with. Something needs to happen, and it needs to happen sooner rather than later, so that people can have a fundamental right. They have a home, they have a roof over their head for their children. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Neil.
Thank you, Mayor. People Before Profit support the motion. It's so important. We need more houses because the scale of the crisis is now in disaster mode. As Councillor Donnelly says, the amount of people who are in contact around housing need it's just so difficult because, without there actually being more houses, there's very, very little that you can do, and you feel very helpless in those situations. This is another example of where Stormont has failed to deliver on houses. The housing executive have had their hands tied. They haven't been allowed to build for years, and it's another example of the Tories trying to destroy the public sector, and Stormont just following that lead. And this crisis is being compounded by the DUP holding up Stormont, and the reality behind this is people in housing stress. Anybody who's worked with anybody in housing stress knows how difficult a situation that they're in, how it impacts families, how it impacts children, and how it impacts their health and well-being. So this has massive consequences for years to come. So much more needs to be done to actually address this housing crisis.
Okay, Councillor McKinney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We will support this motion, and we don't really have too much to add to what was said by the proposer and Councillor Farrell and Councillor Donnelly. They sort of hit the nail on the head. But everybody in this chamber and in the virtual chamber, I'm sure, receives emails every single day from people looking assistance with housing. And as Rory said, none of us will probably ever be here to see the actual, when we get it down to zero waiting list, and it'll never happen, not unless more money's pumped into it. And we fully support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McKinney. No further speakers, so I'm going to go back to yourself, Councillor McKinney, to sum up.
Graham, Mayor, and thanks to the members that spoke in support of the motion. At no point, Councillor Farrell, have we said this is the panacea to fix the housing crisis. However, we do accept that stuff needs to be done to start tackling that, and this is the first phase of that. The Minister's direction at that time did focus on Derry in the northwest and West Belfast as areas of high need. So you may have your calculator. I don't think you've done your sums correctly. But I'm grateful that everyone seems to be in support of the motion, and I'm looking forward to the clarification coming from the department, hopefully to confirm that this isn't being impacted in terms of a target.
Thank you, Councillor McGinley. No voices of opposition, so I'm going to take that as unanimous as well. So thank you. Next motion is Councillor O'Neill.
I've just emailed a slight amendment to Teresa. If she could just get that up before I speak to it. Thanks.
Seconder for that, yourself, Councillor Harkin, and everyone content with that addition to the motion? We'll just take it from there.
There is another, it should be like Council Right to the Education Authority and the Department for Education. So it's literally just putting on the Department of Education in addition to the EA. Like that's really the crux of the amendment.
Okay, go ahead.
Have enough. Thank you. So I'll just take the motion as read. So I think the summary of this motion is that young people should not have to pay to go to school. And, you know, the process right now for young people to get a free bus pass, because some people can get a free bus pass, some people have to pay a TransLink rate, and some people have to pay a private bus provider rate to access their secondary school education. So the process for determining what you pay is totally flawed and it's totally unfair. A case I'm working with at the moment is where there's a young person who wanted to go to a grammar school that wasn't their nearest grammar school in the Moor, and because their first choice grammar school was further away than their closest grammar school, then they have to pay. So for a lot of, like, this isn't an isolated case, this happens numerous times for people who don't want to go to Limerick Christie or they want to go to Thornhall or the college for grammar school education. And, you know, in contacting the Education Authority on this, they said that this is a very, very common problem in the Foyle area and has been raised countless times. The parent who I'm working with has been told that he's wasting his time even trying to get this issue resolved. And under the current policy, pupils are only eligible for free public transport if they've formally sat and been unable to gain a place in any all post-primary schools of the same category within 3 miles of their home address. So, you know, TransLink services are tied up. So TransLink provide the cheaper transport option, but they're tied up service in other schools. So schools have to use private companies who have a higher price as well. Now, you know, this doesn't have to be the policy. This wasn't always the policy. You know, young people used to be able to go to school for free. In other places in the world, young people can go to school for free. They get free public transport. And this can change and it should change. You know, we've seen over COVID how health and social care workers got free transport to go to their places of work. So we should expect so much better for young people here. Obviously, you know, this will be discussing free public transport for all in Councillor Harkin's motion. But, you know, at a start, school students shouldn't have to pay to actually go to school. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Neil. Councillor McKinney.
Thank you, Mayor, for listening. We will fully support this motion because having been a bus driver for the Education Authority, can also just point out to Councillor Neil that the primary school children get free transport as well, so they do to and from school as well. It's not just secondary. So we fully support your motion, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McKinney. Councillor Edwards.
Mayor, thank you, and thank the proposer for bringing the motion, and the SDLP are happy to support it. And can I just first say that the proposer's right that the formula, the policy deployed by the department and EA for free schools transport, it's majorly outdated. I think it was originally set 25 years ago, and it's very convoluted and need a reform. And as outlined for secondary school children, if the child is 3 miles or more away from the nearest suitable school, that's when they get the free transport. But parents who are under the 3 miles, or parents who choose to send their schools to a different school to their nearest school, are expected to pay it, and there's no obligation on the Education Authority. And there is a mixture of provision there. I know locally that, for example, some of the grammar schools here locally do give a bus pass to use Osbus. The parents have to pay for it. And there's also EA bringing private hire buses to some of the schools as well. And I really do feel that EA have muddied the waters in terms of provision, and there's massive cost differences involved. And I also want to raise that there's a cross-border issue here. I see it in my own town of Strabane, where people coming from Donegal, for example, Lifford, you know, the the closest school to them would be in Strabane, and they're not entitled to any free school transport at all. And I'd like to see a cross-border element to this as well. EA used to give concessions, Mayor, back in the day when there were spare seats on buses for those children that weren't eligible, but this was done away with a number of years ago. But ultimately, the allocation through this policy of free school transport is a massive postcode lottery. Many families, and they contact me regularly, are unable to pay the rising costs, especially private providers. And they're also, in terms of the department as well, no, they initially had an initial review of school transport back in 2019, but there's been no follow-up at all and no proposals brought looking at how to better provide free school transport to children. And looking into this, I know that EA spend around 80 million a year.
Councillor Edwards, you need to bring your remarks to a close.
EA spend 80 million a year, but there's no breakdown of how that's spent or whether it could be spent a bit better. And just on a final note, Mayor, there's a massive health and safety issue when EA expect children to walk to schools that are under 3 miles, for example, Balmagurry to Strabane Academy. How could they get there walking along that dangerous A5? But Mayor, SDLP happy to support. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McHugh.
Thank you, Mayor. On behalf of Sinn Féin, likewise, we're in support of the motion, and thank Councillor O'Neill for bringing the motion. I was just listening to Councillor O'Neill there, and she was outlining some of the problems that are faced within the city in terms of school transport and the problems that they encounter. And I can assure Councillor O'Neill that in the rural area where I cover, those problems are magnified and indeed are tenfold. She mentioned the need to review the policy, and totally agree with her. I've been a councillor now for nearly 15 years. We're working with the home to school transport policy, which is totally inadequate for the needs of our pupils and families today. And we would call for that policy to be reviewed and indeed updated. She's quite right that school transport fees it adds an extra burden to people, but especially to, as what we now call, the working poor, people who, because their income is over a certain threshold, then have to pay for their children to go to school, and that shouldn't be the case. It should be standardised right across the board. Education should be free to everybody, no matter where you live or what you earn. But just to say thanks again to Councillor O'Neill for tabling the motion, and we in Sinn Féin are happy to support it.
Thank you, Councillor McHugh. Alderman Devaney.
Thank you, Mayor, for allowing me in, and the DUP has no problem in supporting the notice of motion coming forward here. And I do agree with the previous speaker that, look, you think things are bad within the city, come out to the rural area and see, that 3 mile issue is causing a real problem. I have a number of families who have children who live in Mahermason, and traditionally their mothers and fathers attended the Brady Primary School, and their children attend the Brady Primary School. But because New Buildings is that little bit closer, they can't get the free transport to Brady, but the bus passes their house and they aren't allowed on it. So I do believe the criteria in and around that free transport and the 3 mile needs to be reviewed and reviewed quickly. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Alderman Devaney. Don't have anybody else. Councillor Neil, if you'd like to sum up.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to everyone who spoke in support of this motion. I don't think there's a lot more to say. Someone had mentioned about the access to our schools. For many schools, there's unsafe access, and I think that's a big issue when it comes to pedestrian, bike and air quality access in particular, as well as actual bus access. That the system is unfair at the moment. The easiest way to make it fair is to provide free public transport across the board, particularly for young people. And, you know, I'm aware that this is an issue which impacts urban and also impacts probably a lot more in rural areas. So I think, you know, this could be a great equaliser in actually improving the lives for families and young people here. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Neil. No opposition, so I'm saying that's passed unanimously as well. Thank you. Councillor Harkin.
You, Mayor, there's a slight addition there that's been added in, if that's okay.
Awesome. Okay. Okay, can we get a seconder? Councillor Neil, thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. I think when we heard the announcement that TransLink were raising their prices by 7%, we probably thought not another bill that's going to increase for people. And it was very, very disappointing. And we believe that it's wrong for a number of reasons. We're in the middle of a hardship crisis that isn't getting any better for people. I'm sure people have seen that food inflation is now at 17%, and that the cost of gas is up 130% compared to last year. And there's just been announcement after announcement that means that the people with the least are going to be asked to pay more and more. So one of the things that this will do is that it'll make travel very difficult for a lot of people, and will marginalise people who can't afford to access our public transportation. And it's disappointing. We're actually, we've been seeing more and more people using the trains. We've been seeing more people using the bus service, and I'm sure with the road improving to Belfast, more people will use the bus. So there's the 7% hike, and that's the all fares for buses and for trains. But in the aftermath of publishing this, I was contacted by bus drivers who told me that the TransLink are also scrapping the early bird rates. Now, a lot of people utilise these. It's the 5 to 7 one in particular is nearly a £10 discount on the full price. So that now is going up to a full price. And there's been no public consultation about this. Most people who are using the bus don't even know that that hike is coming. And that is going to make it much more difficult for people it's going to become far more expensive. And I think the buses have been packed during the cost of living crisis because people are trying to get that early bird fare. So that's going as well, which is very, very disappointing. I think we need to call on TransLink to reverse this planned cut, and also to reverse the plans to scrap the early bird rates that are helping people a lot right now. We want to work with TransLink because we want to see our public network grow and expand. But this is a decision that is going to actually undermine the use of public transportation. I think we have to be thinking about how to be moving in the direction of a free transport system that is organised around the same logic of the National Health Service when it's working at its best, that it should be something that people have a right to, and that we should be, creating affordable transportation, but also responding to the climate crisis. We don't want to go backwards with more people, using cars because the price difference is actually working against them. So I think that for a number of reasons, we have to encourage and call for TransLink to reverse these planned cost increases, and we have to have an engagement about radically changing the type of public transportation system we have. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Harkin. Councillor Heaney.
Thank you, Mayor. And thanks, Councillor Harkin, for bringing this forward. Sinn Féin will be happy to support this motion. None of us want to see fare increases, particularly at this time. And we would also be keen to likewise move in the direction of a free public transport system, which was seen successfully brought on first in Luxembourg and then in Malta, and now increasingly looks like Germany is going to be moving that direction also. So I suppose the only point is that it would need to be properly costed, as it will take a substantial investment from central government to make it happen. So we have brought forward proposals in the 26 counties for 196 million investment in public transport as part of a costed wider budget. So it's something that we would support. Whereas we support the motion, we would have a slight concern about the final element of the motion in terms, obviously we have no issue meeting with local bus and rail workers, but we would think it should be, we should be working through the representatives in the unions to ensure that that's done properly. So we would ask the proposer of the motion, if the motion goes through, to make sure that happens. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Heaney. Councillor McKinney.
Thank you, Mayor, for letting us in. I've recently just travelled in Europe and I couldn't really believe the amount of public transport that's subsidised. We travelled in the RER in France and it was incredibly cheap compared to what the real prices are here. And we also used the underground, which was heavily subsidised as well. I was going to ask about clarity on the last paragraph from Sean, but Councillor Heaney's beaten me to it. It was really about representation, Sean, from the unions, etc. That was all, and we fully support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McKinney. Councillor Farrell.
Thanks, Mayor, and thanks, Councillor Harkin, for proposing the motion, and the SDLP supports the motion. We support the calls for TransLink to reverse the fare increase. We think the price hike will hit the most disadvantaged and the poorest people in society. And we have to remember that this was a decision by the Secretary of State. He said in November that there had to be an operating of fares across TransLink. And we have to remember that the Tory government have the resources and they have the finances to avoid these price hikes. But sadly, the political will from the Tories doesn't exist. And previous infrastructure ministers in the form of Nicola Mallon and John O'Dowd in 2022 said there should be a freeze on public transport price increases. But Chris Heaton-Harris has just ignored that and done his own thing. So we think it's unfair. We think it's unjust. We think it should be overturned. And with regard to the free public transport, we had the same motion in February of last year. We supported it then and we support it now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Farrell. Alderman McMorris.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you to Councillor Harkin for bringing the motion forward. We as a party do not want to see any rises to any fares, which affects the people within our communities and further, as they are already facing severe financial crisis due to the cost of living. We as a council know that hard decisions have to be made, as we in the last few weeks have also been faced with making these very hard decisions. Transport has been faced equally with the burden of increased costs for fuel to run the trains and buses, increases in utilities costs to heat and light their train stations or bus stations, as well as trying to find additional revenue to pay for their staff a fair wage for them. As a council, we made the firm stance that we would protect jobs, increase staff remuneration, and ensure that essential services were not cut. Therefore, in light of all the difficulties we know and understand that TransLink are facing, we should be ensuring that any decisions that they will make will not go towards any staff cuts or decreases in their essential services. It is my opinion that TransLink need to work out a strategy of how they can attract more residents to use their services, which could potentially decrease the amount of cars on our road, which will have a better impact on our environment. At present, most, if not all, transport networks across the world are subsidised by their respective governments. Whilst it would be beneficial to all our residents to have a free and effective public transport system, maybe the proposer of this motion would like to disclose where he feels the magic money tree is held, so we can not only solve this issue, but many financial burdens that this council and our government have within Northern Ireland. I'm aware that meetings have been already taken place with local MLAs and MPs. In fact, in this very Guildhall, in regards to hearing what Translink plans are and their vision for the next 5 years. Despite these talks and the difficulties, as already mentioned, we are happy to support this motion in order to include council in hearing their plans. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman McMorris. No further speakers. Councillor Harkin, if you'd like to sum up.
Thanks, Mayor, and thanks everybody for the support for the proposal. In terms of how this can be paid for, look, in Spain they used the proceeds from a windfall tax to create a free public transportation system. We have the Westminster government can do the same. They can actually start properly taxing energy companies that have done nothing but profiteer and put people into financial hardship over the last 2 years. But they already have enough resources to do that. There's going to be another budget set now in March, and there should be a campaign and demand from all our MPs. They should be the loudest saying that the cost of living crisis has disproportionately impacted people right across the north, and there should be more funding coming our way as a result, and that can help alleviate, for example, the Translink hike if they have more funding available. So there are solutions because there is a magic money tree, and we have to radically change how money is spent in our society, and that's the root of the problem, and it's the root of a lot of the discussions that we end up having in here, certainly the ones we've been having for the last 2 years. I definitely agree with Councillor Heaney. I think that it's good to see that there are costed proposals in the south. And that in terms of who we invite, we should formally speak to Unite and sit to and invite them along and any other trade unions that are involved in the transport system. We should formally invite them along for this discussion. I think that the unions have formal positions on this about how to expand and develop our public transportation system and about how to make it more accessible and more affordable for people. And I think we want to be working directly with them to move, this vision that we have forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harkin. And we say that's another one, unanimous. I think we did well this month. Thank you, Councillor Harkin, for bringing the motion, and thank you, everyone. The next 3 items on the agenda are for information. So unless there's something specific, Councillor Riley to start with.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I suppose it's just the response to motions aspect. I'm just querying through you to the chief officers in relation to the response to my own motion on convening the civic forum on food poverty. If there's any update on that, please.
Yeah, I don't know where that's actually sitting at the minute with the civic forum. I'm following the RITS process, but can I come back to you on it? I was hoping to see Seamus today, but I will come back to you on that. Councillor Neil.
Thanks, Mayor. Just in response to motions, Appendix 6 from the Northern Ireland Public Services Ombudsman with regards to the letter we sent relating to Maboy and their report. It's no surprise they've said that they won't release the full report, and they've attached the summary there, which we've already sent around to councillors and council officers. Suppose following this, given that council now have planning powers, it would be good to get officers take on this summary report, and the full learnings can't be obtained because we don't have the full ombudsman report, but just the learnings that have been taken from that and how it relates to how council is operating within planning would be helpful. I don't know whether that would be through planning or through E&R, but if just an officer's perspective on the report would be great. Thank you.
That'll be taken on board, and your views will be taken on board, and then we'll come back to you on it. Okay. Any further items coming out? Okay. No, thank you. Well, that concludes this month's meeting. Thank you all for attending and your patience.